Finance Committee is now in session. May I please have a motion for the acceptance of the minutes for the committee meeting held on December 2nd, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. First on the docket is PCR 120-24, resolution relative to bids. May I please have a motion for acceptance of the minutes for the meeting held on December 2nd, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. Item number 1, bid 2024-322, City Hall Plaza site improvements. Good evening, Director. Please identify.
Hi, Tom Kravitz, City Planning Director.
Thank you.
So before you have the change order, which effectively covers 2 underground unforeseen storage tanks and associated contaminated soils that had to be removed from the site, which cost just under $144,000. And so the reason we're asking for a little bit extra is to cover any other more minor unforeseen changes that are associated with the site or the building, so we don't have to keep coming back to the council. So with staff, we talked about it, and it was agreed that we should ask for an even 200. And if you remember, with ARPA funds for this project, there was an additional 400,000 plus initially budgeted for the project, but the bids came in so low that we're still in a great shape. But this 200 hopefully will get us through the entire project. Happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. So I'll start at the committee. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Director.
Hi.
Director, can you speak to that this was going in originally, you knew that these tests were going to be done and that this process was going to play out? Can you just speak to that? I know some people were concerned. They thought that this was an unexpected.
Yeah, anytime you're dealing with urban fill, like with these redevelopments, even under a paved parking lot, there are some contaminants associated with the pavement in past years, and we suspected there might be some soil that would have to be tested. To the extent the soil will be removed, you can't foresee exactly how much, but these 2 tanks were interesting because we found documentation that said the tanks were removed in the 80s, and we found a plan that stated that, and even in DEM correspondence that said that. So we were a little surprised by the tanks, and that's just something we wouldn't have anticipated they'd be there, you know. So.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to find, right?
Especially when you have documentation saying it's been removed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That goes back. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Foley.
Just based on what you just said and, anticipating certain things and not, is the timeline changed on completion of the project?
No, we're really looking to complete it for this upcoming fall. Initially, they had tried to really accelerate the project by pouring the concrete associated with the rink itself much earlier, like a couple months ago. But that delay that we had with the tanks compressed that time frame because the concrete has to be kept at a certain temperature. And Bentley was so confident they had even they offered to encapsulate and keep warm with temporary heating devices that area that they would pour. Because if they could get a jump on that, then they would have just finished the project sooner, perhaps in the spring. But it didn't happen. And we thought out of caution, let's just, stick with the original schedule.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Gebhardt? Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaw.
Hello, Director.
Hi.
So it troubles me that this is just coming before us now for this additional 200,000 because of the surprise with the tanks. I don't understand why this was such a shock to anyone. In the back of that building forever was the repair shop, if you will, for fire department, for police department, for DPW. And it was well known that tanks were there. So here we are now in the 11th hour, again, telling the city council that you have to appropriate this extra 200,000 because of unknowns. And if you don't, then this whole thing could shift over to Davis-Bacon Act. That bothers me, that here we are in the 11th hour. So I'm just going to read some dates through for you here. On April 12th, the mayor signed the approved bid. The tanks were discovered on June 18th. The RFT was sent to Beta in the city to provide the direction on how to proceed on June 18th. Beta supplied Bentley with a copy of the DEM UST disclosure application to be filled out by Clean Harbor on June 24th. The quote from Clam Harbor to do the work was received on 6/27. Bentley sent back a completed application to Beta in the city for submission DEM on June 28th. A change order issued by Skirka to remove the tanks was issued on July 2nd. The city requested Bentley to issue a check to DEM for the application on July 10th. August 20th and 21st, the tanks were removed. Bentley produced a PCO number 002 for X dollars and cents for doing some of this work. There was no date on that, at least the one that I have in my binder. They also produced a PCO number 006 for an additional 26,000 and change on September 25th. And this goes on and on. So what is disturbing to me is here we are in the 11th hour bringing this to the attention of the city council. And why wasn't this disclosed long ago? And the other issue that I have a question with is the charge of $91,000 for contaminated soil, I believe is what it states, when DEM says there was no contaminated soil. And I have an email as of today, or received today, that states the lab results for the soil samples were below DEM standards. Contaminated soil was not encountered as part of the UST closure work. So that begs the question, why did the tanks even need to be removed? If they were, in fact, decommissioned back in the day and filled with sand. And if there was no contaminated soil, then why are we being charged, excuse me, $91,000 for removing it? And if you can just kind of keep those questions running, because I know I'm running out of time here, but I wanted to also ask a question. On the chain of custody. So we have a chain of custody report in our binders. And it's on page 14 of 14 of the report that goes along from Bentley. And in the chain of custody, it has a collection date initially of 3/20/24. Again on 3/20/24. And then looks like 3/21. And then again on 3/20. Those were scratched out and the dates were changed to 8/20/24 and 8/21/24. And I'm wondering why those dates were changed.
I'm looking in the binder. Is it PDF page 14? Or,
It's part of the report. It's a 14-page report that starts with it's Clam Harbor's report, and it's a 14-page report. Clam Harbor issued this 14-page document on June 27th.
right, on the city's
And that
website, I
is
see.
part of it.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that was issued on August 26th. And August 26th document is where that actual chain of custody is.
While I'm scanning for it, I'm not seeing where the dates are changed on the website, but
Chairman, may I approach?
Yes, but I also have a question, Councilman, just for clarification what you're saying. When you say page 14, you don't mean page 14 from the binder?
No, sir.
Yeah,
Page 14 of the Clam Harbor report.
got it.
Which
From
is
where it
dated
went from
August
page 1 to
26th.
page, got it. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilman. Thank you.
I don't know why those are scratched out. I know that there are dates at which they collect the data. But part of the first answer I wanted to give you might relate to some of this is the time that it takes to do it. I don't know. I'll look at it after though. There were multiple sets of soils tests taken, and the first round associated with the tanks did have to be removed off-site. And the second, more recent round of testing that they did in the vicinity of the building did not show exceedances. So we can utilize that recycled material on-site. But to do these tests, everything works in government in a week or two. Oh, we'll get the tests taken, then we'll get them to a lab, get those results done, get them back. And that definitely causes a delay. I wouldn't say it's a delay. It's the way government just seems to work when you have multiple consultants and state agencies reviewing tests, and it doesn't happen as quickly as we'd all like. That, I think, has something to do with the timing, why it takes so long from the initial test. But I guess to answer the other concern, we thought we were surprised by the tanks only because we had documentation that says the tanks were removed. these particular two tanks, at least. And the reason they had to come out is because when you're, excavating a site and putting in drainage and you have to compact it, you can't have stuff like that in the way. So it's just, you want to get proper compaction and uniform over the whole parking lot so you don't have issues with sinkholes or things later. So that's why they definitely had to be removed. But as to those two dates canceled, I don't know why, but I can certainly look into that and see. I'm sure it was an administrative reason for it, related to maybe the lab tests and when they were actually brought to Johnston. To your point too about the 91,000, how this works when you deliver to the landfill, we were carrying so much of a quantity, hundreds of cubic yards, and similar in the notion to how we're asking for 200,000 versus 144,000. When you go to Johnston, we essentially paid for extra because there was potentially extra soil that we knew would have to go. If it doesn't go, they credit us back. So we're going to be getting money credited back from those deliveries to the landfill. And Bentley we're all on the same page with it. We know now that we can utilize the remaining soils on site. We are going to get money back for that.
But in these documents, I believe we have an invoice for $91,000 that speaks to contaminated soil.
Correct.
That's what I don't understand. How can they charge us $91,000 for contaminated soil when DEM, from their staff person on site during this process, said there was no contaminated soil?
Because you're referring to a later test. There was definitely $91,000 worth of contaminated soil we had to remove.
And do you have the actual invoices that document that?
They should be in this documentation here.
And if I may, can you pause that, please? Thank you. If I may, I just to catch everyone up and my colleagues and the public, within the bid package, this bid goes from page 1 to 47 in the packet. Clean Harbors, which the councilman is referencing, the Clean Harbors report and invoice goes from page 22 to page 35 in the finance packet. And then they're sub-identified as pages 1 through 14, and that's only identifying Clean Harbors. Thank you.
Okay, I have it here, Director. So on this one document coming from you, it says $91,493.09, PCO number 008, disposal of contaminated soils. But yet DEM said there is no contaminated soils. And as I look at this PCCO number 8, that's something that it just says disposal of soil, transport trucking, town of Johnston fee, state fee, and it has an application package, it has hauling, it has allowance draw for 91,000 change. So in this PCCO, am I missing or not seeing something in here that it says that it was for contaminated soil?
Yeah, you must be, because we hauled contaminated soil off the site.
Excuse me, Councilman. So the councilman reached the 10-minute mark. However, Councilman, what we'll do is I will ask the committee for an extended amount of time.
Thank you.
But what I would like to do is just see if there's any follow-up questions that the committee has, or I'm sorry, committee and council have, and then I'll go back to you or I'll put that motion forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions from members of the council? May I have a motion, entertain if anyone has a motion to offer Councilman Lattiser more time? So moved. With how much time would you like?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Second.
We have a motion for an extension of 5 minutes for Councilman Lattiser on this topic. We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Councilman, you have the floor.
Thank you. I don't see it, Director. I don't see in PCCO number 8 where it says contaminated soil. Matter of fact, it says Beta took additional soil samples of the remaining areas on site, and Bentley was advised the results came back clean. Prior to that, it says was halted at the direction of the city on 9/13. Beta was instructed by the city to engage LSP to review options to keep soil on site and remove and dispose.
Yeah, it's on the city's website. It's in the bid spec. It's on PDF page 44 of 108. We have PCCO number 8. That's where that begins with Bentley talking about the disposal of contaminated soils.
Yeah, I see what the title says. The title says disposal of contaminated soils. And it's calling for an allowance draw. But where
Right.
in the report, or where is there an invoice from wherever this was disposed of indicating that it was contaminated soil?
Oh, we can get the trucking slips. Yeah, we can. I'm sure I can track those down if they weren't submitted in here.
Shouldn't you already have them? If we're paying $91,000 for, disposal of contaminated soil, I mean, I would think that you would have those documents already.
The slips with soil, and it's treated as solid waste. $115 a ton.
The chief of staff points out on page 48 of 108, you have the profile reports, which also talk about the soils being disposed of as solid waste. And those are dated 11/7, it looks like. And 11/6. Right, it looks like there's multiple tickets in the columns where it says ticket date truck. And the bill in units is in tons. I think this effectively at least shows you how many trucks and how many trips they made and what was delivered.
Yeah, I believe I've seen that, but I don't see where it has any evidence of contaminated soil.
Councilman, Bill Facenti, Chief of Staff. So how it works with resource recovery, dealing with other projects with resource recovery, they have soil can be used as either cap material for the landfill or is determined to be solid waste. It can't be used as landfill cap. It goes in as just anything like trash and everything else. The levels of contamination were not great enough to bring it to New Jersey or Pennsylvania or lock it on a mountain in Utah, but they were enough that we could not use it as cap material. It doesn't tell you how contaminated the soil is. except in the ESS assessment, they did some soil testing, and you'll see that in the file. I don't know what page it's on. Looking at Tom's computer. 1 second. There is material tests on ESS laboratory. It tells you on page 35 of 108, it gives you the chemical, the contaminant, the parts per million, parts per gram, kilogram, whatever the weight is. It has that information on it. That's from the test results on page 35 of 108. And then Skirka is a subcontractor. Their invoice is in for the actual trucking of the material to the landfill. And then Rhode Island Resource Recovery directly bills Bentley Construction for the cost.
Those charges are not what I'm asking about. The issue of the contaminated soil that you're saying in Texas and Massachusetts and wherever, here is the exact wording from DEM that I received today.
So
It said
where are you reading that?
Where am I reading it?
Yeah,
On
is
this
it-
report, right here.
Is it in the binder?
No,
Okay.
this is information that was sent to me today.
So is that from additional testing that the soil is now clean? Or is that the original testing from the testing company? Because DEM did not test the soil. Additional,
This says,
Councilman, I have a follow-up question. Was that shared with members of the committee?
no. No.
Solicitor? Oh. Did he head out? The question I have, Councilman, I just want to let you know what I'm going to seek, is we make an effort to share all information that have to do with bids. And I understand you received that email, but we don't have the information to review it, therefore to validate it or to even review it, question it. So
Do you think we should hold this then?
no, I do
okay.
not. This is something that I wish was shared instead of being dropped on this council now.
Well, due to the fact that I got it late this afternoon, unfortunately, it didn't get shared. But it doesn't change the fact of what it says.
So I'm going to ask that you hold on that because I'm going to wait for the solicitor because I, as the chairman, I don't feel it should be read into record as we are unaware of it and it's not included in the docket and we weren't given enough time and the public wasn't given enough time to review it. So I don't think it should
What
be
prevents-
allowed to be shared.
What right do you have to prevent me from reading something into the record?
Well, as the chairman of the committee that is responsible for approving the expenditures, and you're saying you're providing information that no one has a copy of, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Well, I can't help the fact that you didn't want to check into this,
Oh,
either, Chairman. You had the
You're
same
absolutely right.
opportunity to check into it
You
the
can
same as I
email,
did.
you may email who you wish, Councilman, but I just want to say that we, as a committee, go out of our way to share information when the information comes before us, and we try to do it in a timely fashion so that all evidence and everything can be heard instead of just dropped over here. Pardon me, so Councilman Sinapi, Councilman Lattiser, you still have 49 seconds left on your timer. Councilman Sinapi has his hand up. Do you mind referring, so letting him answer?
That's fine.
Thank you. Councilman Sinapi.
So, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the potential concern is that the soil was not in fact contaminated and therefore we'll be getting charged more than we should. But according to the PCCO number 8 that was provided to the city, the soil was in fact contaminated. We have an agreement with Bentley Builders LLC that I'm confident in saying, among other things, includes that the vendor will not fraudulently present an invoice to the city. So holding this doesn't really make sense to me because if we prove it and it turns out it was based on fraud, we have ample means of recovery. to put it mildly. So it's certainly worth the city checking into to determine whether or not fraud was indeed present. Absolutely. I certainly would love to see the document that Councilman Lattiser's reading off of for future purposes, but for the purposes of tonight, holding or turning it down doesn't seem like it does much good for anyone. Although bringing it to the city's attention certainly is a worthy cause, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lattiser, I'm just going to ask that you hold off on reading that. Councilwoman Travis, did you put your, oh, I'm sorry. Council President McAllister.
Mr. Chairman, our solicitor is abstaining from this item, so just we won't be able to get a response at this time from the solicitor on this particular item.
So, Mr. Chairman, how about if we leave it like this? I have the email. I will be happy to share it with the Chief of Staff. You're welcome to look at it if you'd like. And I ask that the administration circle back with DEM to confirm whether or not there was any contaminated soil or not. I just don't want to see us paying for something that we shouldn't be paying for.
Agreed, understood. Going on the comments also from Councilman Sinapi, does that sound agreeable to the city?
That's fine. I haven't seen that document. The planning director hasn't seen
Thank you.
that document.
So Councilman Lattiser, if you don't mind sharing that with the city clerk or the council liaison, she'll share it with the rest of the council in the city. That's absolutely fine. Thank you, sir. Please continue. You still have time left.
So with regard to the 200,000, the planning director has indicated that the bid was 484,000, round numbers, 484,000 under budget. We have $144,000 bill, which, as I understand, Director, there has been some direction to pay this. But that still leaves a $340,000 cushion in this bid. So I don't understand why the need is for an additional $200,000 unless there's another surprise coming down the road. Because quite frankly, these tanks, or at least the suspicion of these tanks and contaminated soil, given the years of history of that operating as a garage, that isn't something that should have been any surprise to anyone.
So I don't know if the director Kravitz wants to answer or not. So the city utilized, in the bid, there were allowances, owner's allowances that the city utilized to pay for the invoices from Bentley and Skirka. That depleted or brought down our allowances for future issues that may arise. This $200,000 that we're asking for is to replenish the cushion in case something else happens. If nothing else happens, the money will not be spent. So it's a cushion in once. So just so you know, these are opera funds and community planning funds, economic development initiative funds, also known as earmark funds, do not trigger prevailing wage. This was bid out a non-prevailing wage job. If the city puts in 1 penny of city funds, the entire project becomes prevailing wage. Just so you know.
I know, that was
Thank you.
That was my point at the beginning of
Right.
just bringing this to us now, as opposed to in June or July or
Well, so-
August when this.
So
was
the
already
dollar
known.
amounts weren't known until late October, beginning of November, when we got the slips. And we missed the deadlines for the council dockets.
Councilman, I'm going to interject for 1 second. Your time is over. I'd like to ask if there are any follow-up questions from members of the council. Councilman Riggs.
Thank you, Chief. On that last point, considering that it would be ARPA funds that would be allocated here and the deadlines and the various requirements involved in ARPA funds, would there be any risk that if too much were appropriated at this time in ARPA funds, that we would not be able to then reallocate those ARPA funds for other purposes?
So the funds have to be committed to projects by December 31st. These will be committed under an RFP, or I'm sorry, under a PO requisition. After the funds are not expended or expended, I'm not sure. I'd have to ask the finance director what exactly happens to those funds.
That would be helpful, because unless there's a way to commit the same funds to two different purposes, that gets into, I think, an issue of if we don't spend all of the funds, ARPA funds, for that specific purpose, whatever that purpose may be defined as, then if we're finding out about that after December 31st, we might end up having to return those particular funds. So I suppose what I'm suggesting is, if there is a way that we can commit any additional funds in a very broad manner, in a way that we know that they will in fact be spent, and not only spent, but of course spent in a good, efficient way that's really going to benefit the city and the people here in Warwick, then it gets a little bit tricky for us to justify putting more in as a cushion. I can also understand the need to have a little bit of a cushion here to make sure that if it's otherwise a city money that's being put in, and we wind up having to spend extra and then go over a tipping point where we then end up spending a lot more than is actually needed otherwise, if not for that cushion. Well, I guess my question there is there any other way for us to have a cushion, whether it's through ARPA funds with a broad type of commitment, or some other method to make sure that we're not going to accidentally overcommit on ARPA funds in a way that we wouldn't be able to actually spend them effectively here?
None that I'm aware of. We can't do broad commitments. It has to be under a purchase order. So
that's what I thought. So is there any, I suppose, if you could walk us through the justification of exactly how we're choosing this particular amount as the cushion, as opposed to a higher amount or lower amount, and if there is any potential alternative, whether it's, say, even private donations or revenue from outside sources or anything else that might be able to provide us any cushion here without necessarily needing to overcommit on ARPA funds at this time for the sake of a cushion.
Just as a point of order, are we straying from the agenda topic of this bid? I know the solicitor isn't here, but someone should at least mention this, because I don't know how this relates to the bid anymore from the purposes of HOMA. It seems like it makes sense, don't get me wrong, from a general topic, something that we should consider, but I'm not sure if we can consider it as part of this bid.
Through the
Thank you,
chair-
Councilman Ricks. Would you like to justify or redirect your question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Through the chair to Councilman Snappy, I believe that this is all directly relating to the bid, because part of the topic of the bid is the total spending authority, and this relates directly to the total spending authority authorized here, as opposed to a lower amount.
So in clarification, Councilman, you're saying that this relates to the question that Councilman Lattiser brought up, where he said, or I should say the Chief of Staff brought up, where he said that if we end up spending any of the further funds, then we required the wages.
Exactly. And if I may just add very briefly, I apologize for being late to the meeting. I was stuck behind a traffic accident right
Oh.
outside City Hall.
No worries. No
And,
worries at all.
I did listen to the entire meeting on my phone before
Certainly.
I walked into the room. So
Certainly, no
yeah,
worries.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Director, do you have any follow-up?
Well, just to answer the initial question, how we came to that amount, it's about 56,000 from 144 to, the even 200. We're past, we feel, the items that could be change orders that are high-cost items, having to do with the site work. Now that that's behind us and we're working off the specific building, we just don't expect the change orders to be that much. And we know we're potentially getting a credit back from the soils that we didn't have to transport. So just in working with my staff, we felt that this was sufficient.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that, is there any further questions from members of this council? I know that Councilman Lattiser was going to make a request. I'd like to respectfully wait for Councilman Gebhardt to come back before I put forward a request for a motion that Councilman Lattiser asked for an extension of time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't need any additional time. I would like to request a PCR on this, please.
Yes, sir. Madam Clerk, may I have a PCR on bid 2024-322?
PCR 12124.
Thank you.
You said the PC, could you please repeat that? Thank you. For the record, bid 2024-322 City Hall Plaza Site Improvements is now at the request of Councilman Lattiser, PCR 121-24. Are there any, Council President? Yes, sir. Are there any further questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the public? Good evening. Hold on one moment. He's just going to turn that on. And any questions that come before this committee will go through the chair to the members of the council, and the council will, the members of the, not the council, the members of the city will then, the administration will answer through the chair and answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Michelle Comar. I couldn't really get a lot of information out of what was available online that I received from the clerk's office on the distribution list for this bid. So I did my own research and went to DEM, because when a underground storage tank is removed, there's certain procedures that DEM requires. One is to do a report at the end. And Clean Harbors did a underground storage tank removal assessment report in September of 2024. All this work was done in August, the physical work. The closure report came afterwards in September. So I wanted to read the closure report because that's the boom bang final outcome of the project. And Clean Harbors report was electronically submitted to DM on September 20th, and it's available on their website, and that's where I got my information from. And they say on page 5 of their report that I'm just going to paraphrase this because it's a long paragraph, that they took the bottom soil samples from under the storage tanks, and the samples were analyzed using this method, and all results were non-detect, and the detection limits were sufficiently low to allow comparison to the DEM reportable concentrations. So a summary of the chemical test results provided in this table 2, conservatively compared to the results of the DEM soil residential criteria, and no exceedances. Here's the punchline. No exceedances were evident. So based upon the work, no further investigations or remediation is necessary. So that closed out the report. DEM is happy. I did contact the DEM project manager, and she emailed me back a couple times to answer my questions so I could understand. And she too says in her email to me today, I'll pull that up, excuse me. That this is Miss Jillian Thompson. She was the DM inspector for the tank closure. The two tanks in question were removed on these two dates in August by Clean Harbors. Clean Harbors also provided the environmental consulting services for the project and completed the field screening environmental testing for the soils. Their closure assessment report, which I just read you the punchline on page 5, was submitted electronically on September 20th. The lab results for the soil samples were below DEM standards for contaminated soil was not encountered as part of the underground storage tank closure work. And this is the extent of her involvement on the site. So she gives a website for me to go to DM and read the closure reports. And this project's closed out as far as DM's concerned. And there's no contaminated soil. So I didn't understand that 91,000 line item for contaminated soil, since neither the consultant, Clean Harbors, nor DM reports contaminated soils. There should be no cushion needed. The closure report is done, DM is happy. And actually, as a taxpayer, I'd like to see this additional money request actually based on invoices, because this work was done, completed back in August, September, the closure report. There's no other work. We know exactly what this is going to cost because the work's already done. So if the council doesn't use actual real-time invoices, I think we need a fiscal note. APRA money is taxpayer money. It's not free money. It's taxpayer money. And I'm sorry to see the council backed up against a wall with a deadline to use the remaining money. This should have been well thought of and planned. The work was being done out here in August, and we knew what we were encountering in August. So I'd like to see actual invoice, real-time expenses put in here instead of guesstimates and cushions. There is no need for cushions. The project is closed. DM is satisfied. And so are the consultants. They did their job. There was sand in the tanks reported by the consultant. I don't know if that sand was reused on the site because it wasn't contaminated. So that would be beneficial to use for fill on the site or for drainage or whatever purposes you might need. So I like the plan director to explain the three numbers that came up to 143,000, of which you want to bump that up as a cushion for some unknown reason to 200,000. Those numbers didn't make sense, and that's why I researched at DEM and talked to the project manager or emailed the project manager at DEM. So there's three numbers, three categories you give, the last one being 91,000 for disposal of contaminated soils, which I can't find reports of any.
So, Ms. Komar, you'd like him to answer that question now?
Yes, and I would appreciate, like, you would find valuable these reports that are available on DM's website. It'd be nice to have them in the package for you so you don't have to spend time sorting this out, because that's what I did today. I just said, I don't understand this. I want to see it for myself. I'm sure you want to see it for yourself. And it's there at DEM. Why the planning department didn't put this package together so it makes a nice, neat story for you, I don't know. It would have helped everyone.
Thank you. So, Director Kravitz, you ready to answer that question?
Yeah, I want to first, though, explain, it's pretty clear that I think there's a misconception about the soil that was removed from the site and the tanks themselves. The contaminated soil was not related to the removal of the tanks. So I just wanted to make sure that that's understood. And as for the fees, the UST removals, the 26,124, that of course is to remove each tank, which they did over 2 successive days with DEM oversight of that process. And the additional 91,000 covers the cost to get the material delivered to Johnston And as I said before, we feel that the additional cushion is the most responsible way to use taxpayer money, because to not do so, we're going to let our ARPA funds be obligated to something else, as Councilman Rick said, and we're going to be only increasing the probability that we are paying Davis-Bacon wages on this project, and that's going to add 25 to 30% to the whole project cost. So we thought it was prudent use of taxpayer money to try to secure the additional $56,000 of opera funds on a $6 million project.
Thank you for that answer. I still have an issue about the surprise. When you're dealing with, and this is my last point, when you're dealing with buying property, starting a project, you do your due diligence. And one thing that we know the city requests, even of the land trust, or if we're going to acquire property, is a phase 1 site assessment. And that's just basically research. Was this site used as a garage, a gas station? Those uses that would trigger a Site 2 investigation, which is actual soil testing. And you're saying that the contaminated soils were not part of this underground storage tank removal. They were somewhere on site. Due diligence would be that you hire a consultant to do a phase 1. Obvious, this was a garage, so that's clear cut. Phase 2, testing. And this should not have been a surprise if there was contaminated soil somewhere else besides underneath the tanks. So I was going to ask, were the consultants' contracts, did the city require a consultant at any phase, any one of the consultants, to do a phase 1, a phase 2 site assessment for the project?
Director Kravitz.
Yeah, no, we utilize Beta, who's representing the city's interest in the project. And there are 2 approaches. We're doing the other approach would be what we're doing with Mickey Stevens, and we're 4 years into that testing effort now, which has just concluded. So we elected to do kind of the live load on-site testing in cooperation with DEM, which they'll work with us. We did another round of soils tests to characterize the entire site. That came back clean, and now we can continue moving the project on schedule to hopefully have it done from beginning bid to opening within 2 years.
Excuse me, Chair, is this Mickey Stevens? Because that's not the topic of this bid.
I use Mickey Stevens as another example of a way to do it if you want to do the testing up front. And it is a very elaborate process at DEM to do that. We elected to do it this way because it's the quickest way to do it.
Thank you, Director. Ms. Comer, respectfully, you have 1 minute.
I understand that.
Thank you.
I think due diligence is due for all projects that involve taxpayers' money, whether it be APRA money, some kind of other grant. It's all taxpayer money. And I don't think that was really done efficiently on this project. And I hope another project runs more smoothly than this small project right in our backyard, because this was not done in a timely manner, and you guys are put up against the wall to vote tonight, use it or lose it money. And no cushion is needed. That project is closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments from members of the public on bid 2024-322, now PCR 121-24? Thank you. This is now a PCR. I will ask the committee for a motion.
Move favorable action.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Item number 2 is bid 2025-274, DPW exterior building improvements to the Pilgrim Center. Good evening, Director. Please identify. You have the floor.
Good evening, Eric Earls, Public Works. DPW recommends award to Mill City Construction in the amount of $112,463 to address deficiencies, the masonry, gutter system, and flashing at the Pilgrim Senior Center. You may recall I was here over a year ago asking for funds to do a building assessment of the Pilgrim Senior Center. That was concluded earlier this year. The results of that indicated that these repairs are the priority. So that's why we put a bid together based on the recommendations in that report, and that's why we're here today asking for this funding for this work.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Councilman Gebhardt.
Good evening, Director.
Hello.
I want to say it was last meeting or the meeting prior, we were talking about windows in the upstairs in the dining area. It was also mentioned that there was broken windows in the lower area. Is remediating those part of this?
That is not part of this package, no.
Okay. That'll happen as a follow-on or still contemplating?
It could. Those deficiencies weren't referenced as a high priority in the assessment report. The issues that they're having right now with what we're trying to address is significant water intrusion into the building. So that's what we really want to get at. Some of the windows may need to be repaired, but they don't represent the same kind of urgency.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any questions from members of this council? Councilman Riggs.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Some of these photos, I would encourage members of the public to check out these photos. What's characterized as organic growth is not pretty. So I will say that while I'm disappointed that the Pilgrim Senior Center got to this condition in the first place, considering it's just not that old a building, I certainly fully support whatever is necessary to make sure that it's fully repaired and that these conditions are being addressed. I'll reserve my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any further questions? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Director.
Hello.
When will these repairs, assuming that this passes, when do you plan on beginning these repairs, given, the winter situation that we have?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this work is temperature sensitive, but we would certainly work with the vendor on the schedule, maybe some of the flashing work they could do. But, when you start talking about working with masonry products, freezing temperatures are a hindrance. So we understand we want to get them out there ASAP, but we would certainly work with them on the best course of action with regard to the schedule.
Yeah, I would certainly concur with holding off on pointing and grouting and that sort of thing with the winter weather, but I was just curious to what your plan was. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Thank you. Next is bid 2025-287, GTAC F110 tablets and vehicle mounting hardware. Good evening, Major. You have the floor after you identify.
Good evening, Major Andy Sullivan for the Police Department. The Police Department went out to bid for GTAC F110 tablets and associated vehicle mounting hardware. The department received 4 bids and recommends a contract be awarded to SciTech and Island Tech Services. The department is requesting spending authorization in the amount of $70,000 for the 1-year bid. If approved, funding would be allocated from the police computers budget 30-231. And if I can take this quick opportunity to thank the outgoing council members, President McAllister, Councilwoman Travis, and Councilman Howland McElroy for their service to the city government and your constituents.
Thank you so much, Major. On a personal level, thank you. Are there any questions, comments from members of this committee? Questions, comments from members of the council? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Major.
Good evening.
Major, I just want to, for the record, get clarification on Island Tech Services bid. So they have their price per unit of $25.95, and then the price per 10, they carried it over as $25.95 instead of times 10. So that should be $25,950, $28,950, et cetera, down the list. Correct?
Right. Yeah, some of them, this bid, it does, I see this every year. They do tend to, some carry it over and multiply by 10, others just carry over the individual price.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page with that we're not going to be expecting to get 10 of them for $2,595.
Although that would be nice.
It would be.
Yeah.
That was all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of this council? Questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you, Major.
Thank you.
Next will be DBW. This is bid 2025-276, furnish and install a 38 kilowatt generator at the Warwick Animal Shelter. This is found on page 53. Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Eric Earls, Public Works. Public Works is recommending award to K Electric in the amount of $66,250. One-time purchase for the emergency generator at the animal shelter.
Thank you, Director. And if I understand it correctly, this will, so that on real hot days or on real cold days, or just to keep operations going, because, you know, we understand what the shelter does. I think we're all very aware of the great resource that shelter is. This is a safety factor for all the living species in that shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. This type of thing is long overdue. You know, if there's any power outage, there's no way to control. Obviously, electricity is out, so temperature controls are out. It just creates a hazardous situation, and this would obviously remedy that.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a comment. I had an opportunity to visit the animal shelter about a year ago, and I'm happy to see that we're going to be putting some money into that building. Definitely can use some attention, and this certainly is a great place to do this with this generator. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you. Next is bid 2025-313 Barracuda backup maintenance. Now I can't get the song out of my head. Director, it's your microphone. Please identify.
Hi, Phil Carlucci, IT Director. This is a request to award the licensing, support, and maintenance for our Barracuda backup appliance and cloud subscription to Visual Edge IT in the amount of $57,608.57. Visual Edge is currently our assigned channel partner from Barracuda. This represents an approximate 11% reduction from last year's cost. I was able to negotiate with them based on what we just did with the email appliance, moving it to the cloud for the email storage and archiving. And also, Visual Edge has a cybersecurity arm, and knowing that we have a lot of federal funding available for cybersecurity, they were enticed to play nice, I guess. So they were able to reduce the price by about 11%.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from members of this committee? Questions, comments from members of the council? Questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you, Director. We have come to the point of the...
Councilman?
Oh, I
I
apologize.
believe there was a...
Oh, I apologize. Go ahead. Councilman-elect Muto, please. You please use a microphone, Councilman. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please identify, and then you may proceed through the chair.
Sure. My name is Bill Muto, council-elect. Question.
Yes, sir.
Just real simple overall, nice job when it comes to the technology with the City Hall and all the other processes. Question on the bids or the folks that actually bid for us. Do we have any Rhode Island or Warwick companies that are on our bid list that we consider?
For this particular item, Barracuda assigns us a channel partner. We can petition them to change. Barracuda, to the best of my knowledge, does not have a channel partner, certainly not in Warwick. I'm not sure, but I don't believe they have one in Rhode Island. I believe Connecticut and Massachusetts. Whenever we do go out to bid for something that is wide open, we always give preference. There's a point system. We give preference to anything in Warwick. And just for our own sanity, we try to stay centric to Rhode Island. If we have to, we like to go to Eastern Connecticut or Southern Massachusetts.
Nope, I just wanted to make sure we were trying to use our Warwick and Rhode Island partners. Second question, and it's really not about the Barracuda backup.
If you don't mind speaking into the microphone, Councilman-elect.
When it comes to the Barracuda backup software, is that a managed services or a software?
It's neither. It's an appliance with firmware on it, so there's a software component, but it's actually an appliance for a local storage, and then there's a cloud storage. And not to talk geek speak, but it goes into an air gap backup in the cloud, just in case of a cyber attack.
All right, that was my final question is cyber. We've all been experiencing it. Unfortunately, is there a plan, or you mentioned a plan about increasing our cyber security?
Our cyber don't want to go off topic. If I can sort of just very quickly, we have a cybersecurity posture plan. This year's funding, we have, I sit on a committee for the state with has federal funding. So we're trying to leverage the federal funding for this budget cycle, but we have several projects as soon as FEMA approves them.
Thank you.
Well done, Director. Thank you. We have come to the end. No, just double check. Since we had a question from, that was a member of the public, are there any further questions from members of the public? Thank you. We've come to the end of the items that are above the $50,000 threshold. We now come to the rest of the bid package, where I will go to members of this committee, to members of the council, to members of the public. If there is an item that you would like to have pulled for discussion out of the bid package, please identify it. So I'll begin at the committee side. Any item? Thank you so much. Is there anything from the council that they would like? Councilman Ricks.
I'd request bid 2025-289 furniture for the Pilgrim Senior Center.
Thank you, Councilman. You requested 2025-289, item number 6, Senior Services Furniture to the Warwick Pilgrim Senior Center. That's found on 61, correct? Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Are there any other items members of the council that would like to pull and discuss? Are there any items from the bid package that members of the public would like to discuss? Are there any items from the bid package that members of the public would like to discuss? Thank you. So then we'll go right to you, Councilman Ricks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow the director to come up. Please identify, and then I'll give it right to Councilman Ricks. He'll have the floor.
Hi, good evening. Kathleen Bohl, Acting Director of Pilgrim Senior Center for Senior Services. This is a bid for furniture for the Pilgrim Senior Center. We're asking for $24,940. Lowest bidder was WB Mason. They're going to assemble and install. The bid amount, when we initially went out to bid, I had some estimated number of furniture. We then finalized the floor plan. I'm happy to report we have a really busy pool and chess club. I went in there the other day and they were mobbed. So I want to make a little lounge area for them. So the initial amount in the bid, the initial quantities changed slightly from the initial specifications.
Thank you. That's really one of the points that I wanted to make sure was brought up this evening, and have a little bit more information on this process. Full public transparency on items such as this. I saw that there were 9 bidders, and I can imagine that when it comes to something as complicated as furniture, with 9 different bidders and all of the different specifications, and then obviously going with the lowest qualified. But I'm sure that anyone who's been out there furniture shopping, they see all of those different options, all those different possibilities, and might be hard to pick and choose and then wind up just going on the lowest price. So I suppose I just wanted to pose the question for the purposes of this furniture, keeping in mind we're talking about, well, I don't need to tell you, we're talking about senior citizens. You're happy with the selection and the particular items that WB Mason is going to be providing as part of this bid?
Yeah, they were able to match all of our exact specifications except for 2 pieces of furniture, but they're so similar you can hardly tell a difference.
Well, that's wonderful. Really glad to hear, because it's certainly not an easy one to send out for bid when it's for these very particular purposes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any further questions from members of the council? Are there any questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you. Before I call for an end to this committee, I want to just say thank you to the professionals and the directors on the city side. Serving as the chairman the last 4 years has been a great honor, and I've been privileged to work with each and every one of you. To my members on the council, the same. I welcome the conversation and the debates and the questions we brought up. Council President, thank you for entrusting these 2 gentlemen next to me and convincing them to serve on this committee. And I reserve the best for last. I want to thank Councilman Vincent Gebhardt, and I'd like to, Vinny Gebhardt, and I'd like to thank Councilman Bill Foley for being the utmost professionals and moving this city forward in many ways in a real awkward situation the last 4 years, post-pandemic, if you will. Started during a pandemic, moved it on. I was honored to serve with both of you, and I thank you so much. And with that said, the time is now, oh, for crying out loud, yep.
When are you leaving?
I know, soon. Can you tell? May I have a motion on PCR 120-24?
Move favorable action.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And with that, it is 6:13 PM and the Warwick Finance Committee is closed.
The next committee to meet is the Intergovernmental Committee, which will meet at 6:20. So we'll see you back here at 6:20.
It is now 6:22 PM and the Intergovernmental Committee is now in session. The first order of business is the acceptance of minutes from the committee meeting held on November 6th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The first item on the calendar is PCR-119-24, resolution to adopt updates to City of Warwick Local Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is on behalf of the administration. This is a requirement from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This has already come before the council previously after public hearings, and then the council voted on this. We sent it to FEMA for approval. They have sent it back. They have approved of this plan, but they do require another vote of the city council on this. We want to make sure that we are in compliance with FEMA. So that's why we're doing this at this time. This is not a perfect document. It can be added to in the future as well. But I do think that we need to make sure that we have this framework in place in case there is some type of an emergency and we do require assistance from FEMA, that we don't get dinged on not having a properly filed plan with them. So this is, like I said, the council has already voted to approve this plan, this draft, if you will. It was sent to FEMA. FEMA has approved it as well, has sent it back to us. But it can be like a living, breathing document. So what I'm asking my colleagues to consider at this time is that we approve this plan because we know that FEMA has checked off on it. And then I'm asking that the administration continues to work with all interested parties to continue to improve it as we move forward. But I do think it's important that we get this framework in place, get everything checked, make sure we're staying in compliance with FEMA requirements. So I ask for favorable action. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do I have someone from the city to present the plan?
Good evening, council members. Sean Henry from the Planning Department. Better. Sean Henry from the Planning Department. I don't have much to add to the council president's initial comments. This is a very important plan to have approved for certain types of non-emergency funding from FEMA. And FEMA has returned a status of, it's called approved pending adoption, meaning that it is approved as soon as the city council adopts this plan. So we're hoping for that this evening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Anthony?
Just one. When it comes to Scribner's errors, is that something we can handle? Is that something we leave to the administration, or is that something we have to actually do formally because FEMA's involved?
I've spoken with the consultant VHB this afternoon. We received an email yesterday evening, and it did include a few items of, the date of August 20th instead of August 19th. Those are okay that we can correct those. The administration, the consultant will work on a final version of the plan. However, she did caution me that any substantive modifications to the plan do require us to resubmit for FEMA. And unfortunately, we get put at the back of the line. So we can approve those, spelling mistakes, things like that.
All right, perfect. I'll forward this email from Ms. Walsh then, because she points out a few.
I have those four, I believe.
Even better.
That's the one you had.
Any other questions from the committee? Questions or comments from the council? Councilman Lattiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to reserve any comments or questions that I may have until we hear from the public. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Councilman Ricks?
Thank you. I'd just like to affirm what the council president stated earlier. It's my understanding that it is time sensitive for us to approve this at this particular meeting, as opposed to putting it off until January, correct?
Correct.
And similarly, as to anything that's beyond effectively a Scrivener's error, which you would also characterize the 4 items that were raised in the constituents' email as Scrivener's errors, correct?
Correct. I can list those 4 if you like.
That would be helpful. And then I suppose before you do that, the last question that I had is, as the council president referred to it, this is a living, breathing document that approval of this item this evening is not going to prevent us from revisiting and making additional substantive changes subject to FEMA approval and additional action, correct?
That's correct. And in fact, the State Emergency Management Agency now requires that the hazard mitigation committee, which formed this document, meet on an annual basis to address items. So it will be modified in the coming 5 years.
Well, that's very good to hear. And pardon that interruption. I'll allow you to get to those 4 scrivener's errors.
Of course. There was a date correction from August. In the plan, it says August 20th. The city council meeting was on August 19th. Correction of the resolution number that's before you this evening. On page 13 in the plan, Veterans Middle School is referred to as Veterans High School, which it used to be. We're going to correct that. And lastly, there's a question on whether the civil preparedness ordinance needs to be mentioned. It does not. That's more of an administrative fact than something that needs to be put in this plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just for the record, I wanted to at least make one correction there on the comments that were received. The item cited about the resolution needing an amendment because it was citing the wrong date, that the wrong resolution number is not necessary. There was some confusion about when our PCRs or proposed council resolutions are numbered one way, and then when they're enacted, they become a council resolution with a different number. And so that discrepancy can be confusing at times, but just for the council and the public's knowledge, the resolution before you is accurate. So no changes needed to the resolution itself. So that item number 2 of the 4 items that Sean has listed is not necessary to take action on.
So do you need something changed or you? Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the council? Questions or comments from the public?
Hi, folks. Before I comment on this, I'm sorry, Barbara Walsh. Before I comment specifically, I just want to say thank you to those council members who are leaving. It's been a pleasure getting to meet with you and talking with you. I hope your successors will be as amiable as you all have been to hearing feedback and discussing issues. Not that I always get what I'd like to see happen, but that's not the point. The point is to be able to talk with you folks. And you've always been gracious about that. So I want to thank you for that and say goodbye. On this particular resolution, I want to apologize, first of all, for my confusion about the resolution number. I had no idea you reversed the numbers at different points in time. So I apologize for raising that. That is now a red herring and shouldn't be raised again. I do understand that the deadlines are really important for documents like this in terms of the FEMA requirements. I have no objection to making certain documents like this fast track in order to take care of the needs of the city as you all see fit. However, these issues that I've raised could have been addressed in August. I do object to the process. When I raised them in August, I was told there couldn't be a 2-week extension to deal with them because there were deadlines at that time. Well, after that, I was very pleased to get a response from Mr. Henry about some of my concerns. And he was very good about one of my issues in particular, the notification issue. But about a month ago, I left a voice message and I wanted to know what was happening with the rest of these changes and if we could talk about some of the issues that I raised. And I've not heard back. So I do object to the process by which not everybody responds to citizens, and I think that's important. I understand Mr. Kravitz and Mr. Henry are here tonight, so I'm just going to ask again on the record that I get a call back because I have additional information to discuss with Mr. Henry about notification of these types of documents and some agencies that can help him with more resources. In terms of this particular issue relating to the plan and my concerns about animals, I do ask now that sort of an offering has been suggested that this is a fluid document and policies perhaps engaged in with the city could provide an addendum or an addition to the framework of this to specify the issues that I have been raising since August. The specifics of how do you move 40 animals from this location to that location as a single individual entity, e.g. the Warwick Animal Shelter. They are incapable of doing that with 2 or 3 staff and personal cars, no vehicles by the city in which you could put crates, carriers, or cages for up to perhaps 30, 40 animals. I am absolutely rabid about this, no pun intended, because I was involved in the flood that happened 12-ish years ago when the shelter flooded up to the ceiling tiles. Those folks had 2 hours to get out about 40 animals. And if they hadn't done it, they all would have drowned sitting in their cages and carriers or crates or kennels. And that would have been on the city. The reason they got them all out of there was because other agencies with vehicles rushed to that site and moved those dogs out to the Thayer Arena. You cannot put that on the shelter to say, oh, just come up with a plan and it's your responsibility and good luck with it. It can't work that way in an emergency. I saw how that happened. My husband and I personally took 5 cats because of that 2-hour window to move every animal in there. And it was volunteers who took out every cat, about 20 cats. It was volunteers. It wasn't city officials or employees. So it can't be on the staff. The executive director that is there right now has contacts, but she's not going to be there more than a couple years longer. She's looking at retirement. And when you get new people in there, they're not going to have the networks. This has to be specified in writing. Who do they call and who will respond when the call comes in? In a chaotic situation, in an emergency, that's not the time to figure out what your network is. The plan, an emergency plan, should be specific. And that can be done by policy. Since it's not specified in the plan, I'm now asking that you facilitate, that you present, that you support, that you ask, encourage, whatever, that city officials specify in writing so that when that call goes out, if such an emergency occurs again, the receiving person on the other end of the call will respond. Otherwise, you could make a phone call and that person could say, we have no vehicles to help you, we have no staff to help you, you just have to deal with it because we're dealing with other issues. In an emergency, of course, everybody's going to be dealing with a myriad assortment of issues, and they're not going to have staff standing by to see if somebody calls them that they then will decide whether they will respond to that call or not. It can't work that way. These things have to be set up in advance with agreements from administration that when you get this call from that place, you will respond. So if it's the police department, if it's public works, if it's animal control, if it's all 3, there need to be very clear lines of communication that the call is made, the call is received, and somebody says, we'll be right out there. We know you've got to move those animals. If you had 40 animals drowning in cages, I think you can imagine what the public outcry would be, what the press would be, and I can assure you, this is now all on record, and it will come back to city officials to explain why they didn't deal with it when it wasn't an emergency. I kind of thought that was the point of a plan. So I'm going to ask that you still address this or support it or facilitate it so the specifics can happen. The second part of what I raised is, to me, make a decision one way or the other. Yes, people are responsible for their own owned pets, but it is up to the city to say that city-run municipal shelters for people accept pets or they do not. I do want to just reiterate that it is very clear in research that people in emergency situations like flooding and hurricanes, that people in domestic violence or elder abuse situations often don't leave dangerous situations because they won't leave their pets. We know this. We know pets have to be accommodated. The city simply, in this case, needs to say, we'll do it or we won't do it, so that when people start making phone calls in an emergency, there's an answer. This shelter for people will accept pets, none of the others will. Or, no, none of our shelters accept pets. You now have to try to find a place to put your pet while you evacuate yourself as well. That's all. That's all I want for owned animals. Just decide on a policy and specify it so that the information can be shared immediately when a crisis occurs. For the animal shelter, that's a little different, and I think that has to be much more clearly delineated. So thank you for accepting the feedback, and I appreciate being able to provide the input. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening again, Michelle Comar. I had emailed 6 comments to the planning department and to Superintendent Bill McCaffrey back in August when we last were here before the council. And I have not received an email response since August. And I, like Barbara Walsh, were kind of told, what you see is what you get tonight. That's it. That was back in August. Now, FEMA's reviewed it. They haven't addressed public comments that were before the council and emailed to the planning department. I'd just like to home in on one of my comments, because this one's really important to me, and I have not got the answer from anyone yet. It was one of my last comments, and it dealt with the new high schools. And my question was, does VETS, which is the middle school, as we know, and will the 2 new high schools have supplemental power generators, and will all 3 schools be planned emergency shelters? And I opened my statements to the council that night in August by saying, people open up this document, they want to know 2 things: emergency routes, how do I get to a safe spot, high ground? And how do I get to shelters? Where are the shelters? What do they provide? So right now, the report says, and it hasn't been changed since I read it back in August, that VETS High School, we know is middle school, is a Red Cross designated shelter. But we're spending probably $400 million on 2 new high schools. It seems that it is practical, if not necessary, that those high schools qualify for whatever approval process there is as designated shelters, whether that be floods, storms, power outages, cold, heat waves, whatever it is, they're shelters. And I cannot get the answer from the school department. Superintendent has not responded to my emails. I'm just at loss for why we're not planning ahead to have schools built adequately to standards to be public shelters. So of my 6 questions that I emailed, plus a couple more that I went before the council and mentioned, this one stands out before me, and I'd like to have that answered tonight. This is a 5-year plan, and we probably should look and see if we can get this addressed, because the schools might be built in 5 years. At least they're in the works being designed. So I think it's a relevant question to have answered. Somebody from the planning department?
Sean Henry, Planning Department. I couldn't speculate as to whether future buildings will or will not be designated as shelters. Pilgrim High School is today designated as a shelter. Like you, I assume it would make sense for it to also be a shelter, but I don't think that decision has been made yet. I don't know if that's a Warwick emergency management decision, but I don't think that question is intended to be resolved in this document.
Well, thank you, Mr. Henry, but I do believe it should be. It's a 5-year plan. We're designing the school system. You don't just put a sign on a school and say, it's a shelter. It has to be designed structurally to withstand storms. Windows have to be sturdy enough not to be blown out against winds, floods. I think this is something we need to address, and I'm going to be addressing this with FEMA if it doesn't get addressed tonight. My emails, no answers to my emails. I could just pass them along to FEMA with my other comments. The consultant that was here at the council meeting in August thanked me for my comments. She said, thank God somebody read the whole thing. And now I found out nobody cared. Nobody answered them. And I'm very concerned about putting $400 million into 2 new high schools, and they're not going to be built. And I haven't heard they are. Please verify that they're going to be built to qualify as public shelters. And that has to be incorporated into the design, not a sticker you put on the building afterthought. How can I get this answer?
May I? Yes. So the designs for the schools aren't final yet. So no one will have an answer for this unless and until those designs are final. Your points are valid as far as, yes, once those are final, we absolutely should know conclusively it either will be a shelter, one or both of them, or they won't be. And as soon as we know if they are, then yes, it should absolutely be reflected in here, especially if they're not Pilgrim included, because then it needs to be amended accordingly. Pilgrim, the new Pilgrim will not be one. But until those designs are final, I don't see how they could put it in here one way or another. How the prospective schools will be. It's just not known yet.
I can respect your answer, Councilman, but I tend to disagree, having gone to some of the school committee meetings and knowing a little bit about the design process, being a consultant for years. This has to be incorporated into design, and the school committee has told the public they're short of money, so they know pretty well to the detail of what's going into the school design and what's not. I guess I have to ask for the specs or a 30% design that they have finished and look at it, because the school department is not willing to give that information out. And I think it's going to be disappointing when we all get 2 new high schools and the public's knocking on the doors to get in as a shelter, and it's not available as a shelter. And the windows are blown out, the roof collapsed, or whatever structural design requirements are needed. It needs to be done now in the design phase, and not find out and wait and see after the design is done. What are we going to do? Put another amendment in and redesign the schools again? This answer is being hidden, I may add. I really believe it is. It's not being given out to the public, and I think we need to know with confidence that it's being taken care of. And I was so distraught learning that this plan didn't address this. I called the speaker. He was at the Democratic convention. I said, I can't find the answer to this. He says it's ridiculous if these schools are not designed to be public shelters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman McElroy, members of the committee, members of the City Council who were here listening, as well as members of the public who were here, and our contingency from the Planning Department. My name is Michael Zarum, for the record. Tonight, I will be speaking on this issue both as a resident and as president of the Bucky Brook Coalition, which is specifically mentioned in the Hazard Management Plan. I have not had a chance to review the final draft yet. I tried to call VHB today and was not able to get a hold of them. And before this committee began, I had a brief discussion with Sean Henry, and we agreed that the questions I have, we would address in committee right now. So with that, I would like to thank Sean Henry for all his hard work in putting this together. It's a very, very difficult task. I understand it's time sensitive. And I do want to mention one thing, that prior to this, I was a member of the city's Resiliency Planning Committee. I was appointed to that committee by former Mayor Joe Solomon, and with the recommendation from Dan Geegan in the Planning Department. And the reason they selected me to be a public member on that is being a long-term resident, being very familiar with the geography of the city, having degrees in both civil and environmental engineering and stormwater management, also knowing where a lot of the problems exist in the city and trying to make sure that get into a final draft. So before I make any comments through the chair, if I could just ask a few questions to Mr. Henry. Sean?
Sean Henry, Planning Department.
So first, thank you for your diligent work here. One of the things that I asked was how many public members there were, and I don't believe any of the public members on the committee had a background in environmental, either environmental engineering or environmental planning. I do know that the final draft was done by VHB Consulting Company. It was done by their environmental division. I also know that on the former committee I was on, there were specific things that came up, and I'd like to ask Mr. Henry if those are covered in the current one. One of them was, as we've all noticed, I don't want to call it climate change as much as that the weather has been more intense. We have rainstorms that are longer duration and more intense than before. And that leads to usually more frequent flooding. This is reflected in what's called the State Stormwater Design Manual that has meteorological tables. And they're all based on a 24-hour storm. And now, Mr. McElroy, I'll wait till you finish with Mr. Foley. Thank you. The design for how much water can handle in the stormwater system is based on what's called the Rhode Island Stormwater Design Manual. Those storms are based on what comes down in 24 hours. And we know from the storm that we had last week, it rained pretty intensely for 3 days. One of the things that's changed is that the storms that we have now, they're more intense, meaning more inches of rain per hour than usual. And also the storms aren't just a 24-hour, they're much, much longer. But all the drainage inlets that you see out in the street to gather all the rain and put it somewhere else so it doesn't flood is based on a 24-hour storm. So when I was on the Resiliency Committee, we had discussions on modifying the State Stormwater Manual and updating the meteorological tables in there. And with that, I'd just like to ask Mr. Henry if that's reflected in this plan anywhere or not at this time.
Were those manuals updated?
Excuse me?
You asked if the plan represents, I was unclear if if those manuals were updated or if they were thinking about updating them. I wasn't clear what your question.
Well, I believe that a
referenced.
lot of the hazard management plan addresses what type of response there would be from the city and FEMA and the state in an emergency. But does it also address stormwater management, stormwater design, and things like that with the city? The other thing that's changed the last couple of years, I think everybody knows that we have groundwater. And if you look at where the city of Warwick is, with Narragansett Bay to the east and Greenwich Bay to the south, most of the rainwater goes either in the ground or it runs off into Narragansett Bay or Greenwich Bay. All the drops that come down everywhere, they get in the ground or they go in the system and go out that direction. But there's only so much capacity. And I think everybody's seen groundwater. It rains and the ground gets absorbed into the ground, but as it's raining and the groundwater level gradually comes up, eventually it goes above ground and then you get floods. Has that been looked at all in this document at all and management for that too, or is it just how to treat things during an emergency?
Generally speaking, the plan does address stormwater, resiliency with erosion, sea level rise. However, the plan does not get to the granular level of best stormwater practices. It does provide some priorities where capital improvements are planned, denoting risk, relative prioritization of projects against one another. However, the granular level of how stormwater is managed is left to any engineers that would be designing those projects.
Okay, thank you. And then one of my first comments on the resiliency committee identified potential harm over at the Warwick Sewer Authority. We already know that they have been flooded before. There was also a dike surrounding the holding tanks that was next to the Patuxent River. There was also at one point in time, the Army Corps of Engineers did a mitigation project out there. Personally, I know because I remember when I was in my younger years in school, and the Warwick Sewer Authority plant was designed, they had to make a choice on the height of that dike, whether it would be designed for a 100-year storm or a 200-year storm, which would be more rainfall, higher propensity to flood. Is there anything in here? I noticed there was a member from the Warwick Sewer Authority on the committee to leave the height of that dike the way it is or modify it and increase it. Has anything changed there since they were last flooded?
We did have members of the Warwick Sewer Authority on the Hazard Mitigation Committee. I cannot speak to that particular project where it stands tonight.
Pardon me, Chair. So the council president has asked if we could take a recess.
Yes, I'm going to stop. Are you almost done? We're going to be pausing.
I'm almost done. I was just asking one more minute and wrap it
Okay,
up.
one more minute.
Best interest. And then also, I want to thank Barbara Walsh for speaking. I'm not going to repeat her comments, but I do agree with everything she said. And I would ask it be taken one step further, not just to be a plan for the animal shelter, but in the event of an emergency, there's actually a checklist item that lists the Warwick Animal Shelter on a checklist, so it doesn't get forgotten. The only other comment I have, I want to be sure, I might defer this to Solicitor Walsh, is that to be certain, given the deadline for FEMA and that they've already pre-approved this, that I would support getting it in for now, but I'd like to make sure there's language in there that states that it can be updated. And with that, I would support it as long as it's clear that it can be updated if we find omissions and things to make it better. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now pause the intergovernmental committee to go into the council meeting at 7 o'clock, and then we will return to the intergovernmental committee meeting later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the public. We will go back and complete this committee meeting. We just have some business to take care of at 7 o'clock. So we'll see you back here at 7 o'clock.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. You'll be good.
I'll just take care of it now.
I actually of the day of the rainstorm. I was in, at the meeting. Just had to take it on because I need the power, but I forgot the lights were on, so naturally, what do you call it? Yeah.
If we could have the family members of the outgoing council people come down and join us, please, for the start of the meeting. For everyone following at home, we're just going to call the meeting to order. We're going to do roll call and general communications. And after general communications, we will go back in and finish the business of the meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I call the December 16th, 2024 City Council meeting to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McAllister?
Here.
Mr. Foley? Mr. Gephardt?
Here.
Mr. Howe?
Here.
Mr. Lattiser? Mr. McElroy?
Here.
Mr. Ricks?
Here.
Mr. Sinapi? Here. Ms. Travis?
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Councilman Howe, will you and your family please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much. So if you're following at home, we are now under general communications, which is the announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events. I have a couple of congratulations, and they are to some of my colleagues that have served the city of Warwick, and I have invited their families to come here today. So I thank my colleagues on the council for this time, and I thank the public. Again, we will go back into regular business order after we finish general communications. But at this time, I would like to congratulate and acknowledge Councilwoman and President Pro Tem Donna Travis. Councilwoman Travis has served on the City Council for 30 years. But long before that, she has served our city in so many different ways. Endless committees, endless groups, endless fundraisers, has been a true advocate for the city of Warwick her entire life as a lifelong resident here in Warwick. So, Councilwoman, I can't thank you enough for the guidance that you have shown this council throughout these years, for all the great advocacy, not just for your ward, but for the city as a whole. So I congratulate you and thank you and your family. I know you can't do this alone, and your family is your rock, and that they support you and all the late nights and all the early mornings for over 30 years. So I ask my colleagues to stand with me and congratulate Councilwoman Donna Travis for her service to the city of Warwick. And Councilwoman, I have a little plaque here that I wanted to get. This is from me to you. Like I said, it's been an honor serving with you on the city council. My second item under general communications is another congratulations to my good friend, Councilman Jim McElroy. Councilman McElroy has served on the council the last 3 terms. He has been a true patriot, a true citizen of the city of Warwick for a long, long time. He also has an unbelievable family that is also serving the city of Warwick. His wife, I believe, just retired as a principal, has served the students of the city of Warwick for years. His sons work for the city as teachers as well. Great leaders on their own right. His daughter's teachers. His daughter is a successful lawyer as well and serves the city in a capacity here as well. The McElroy family, led by Jim, have been great stewards of the city of Warwick, and we thank you very much, Councilman, for your service to the city of Warwick. And my next item under general communications is another congratulations to my good friend, the chairman of the Finance Committee, Councilman Tim Howe. Councilman Howe and I came on the council together in 2017. We've been through a lot, and it's been an honor to serve next to you and with you all these years. The councilman is also a teacher. He's also a veteran who served our country. So not only does he serve our city, but he serves our country. Has an amazing family. I'm so glad that they were able to come here this evening. Your wife takes care of all of us. She's a nurse and a true leader in the community. I know your daughter very well and your grandson as well. And great job leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, Lincoln. Chairman Howe, one of the toughest jobs we have on the city's council is looking after the finances, and it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time away from your family. It's a lot of time chasing down emails and requests and follow-ups, and you took that challenge and you did a great job. So I really appreciate your service to the city of Warwick, your service to our country, and it's been an honor serving with you, Councilman Howe. And last but not least, I just want to give congratulations to my daughter Grace and my wife Vanessa, that they don't have to hear me talking about council meetings any longer going forward. And thank you for all the support. And you're up late tonight, so we're going to get you out of here pretty soon, okay? So I would like to get a picture with my colleagues that are leaving, and if you want to take some pictures with your families, then we will pause the council meeting after general. I'll come back and see if there's anybody else has anything under general communications, but if we could take some pictures at this time, that would be great. We're just going to finish up general communications, take a quick 5-minute recess, and then we'll pull the meeting back to order. So is there any other council members have anything under general communications at this time? Announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events? Councilman Lattiser.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to extend my congratulations to my 4 colleagues, our 4 colleagues that have served with us over the years. I know I go back a long ways with particularly Council President and Councilwoman Travis and Chairman Howe. So it's been a pleasure. We haven't always agreed, but that's part of governance. That's part of what we do. That's part of that military thing too. But in all seriousness, I want to wish all 4 of you the best of luck going forward, the best of health, and God bless you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other council members have anything under general communications? Councilman Howe.
Mr. President, I respectfully refer to Councilwoman Travis.
Councilwoman
30
Travis.
years she earned that right.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Councilwoman Travis.
Two things. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone. It's been a long journey, 30 years, but I enjoyed it. I love the city of Warwick, and I love representing Ward 6. I want to thank all the directors. I've seen many directors come and go, and mayors and council people, but I met so many good people, and it's been wonderful, and I really enjoyed doing what I did, and I feel like I left my ward a little bit better than when I came in. So that's what I was here for. Now I'll have a new leaf to turn over, but I will miss all of you. My good friend Joanne, I will miss her, and everybody else. I enjoyed working with my colleagues, and on a sadder note, I do have a moment of silence. For Loretta Olivera, Oakland Beach resident. She was born there. She passed away at 92. Her husband and both her sons were Warwick firefighters. She was a wonderful lady and a big pillar in the community. I'd like to have a moment of silence.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to say thank you to my colleagues, to the people that I've worked with. I agree, Councilman Lattiser. We've had some contentious discussions, some heated discussions. However, you and I have always found a way to step aside. Sometimes we needed cooling off periods, but you and I have always found a way to step aside. And I think our common bond is our love for our families. Our common bond is the true love of the city. And also, as you said, that understanding of service, that understanding of, we can disagree. We will not always agree. There are things we absolutely never will agree on, but it's that cooling off period and the reassess. And I look forward to sitting outside, on the outside and reconnecting again and staying in touch and discussion. To my colleagues, I can't thank you enough. I already thank the Finance Committee members, but I have to say the last 4 years have been phenomenal. To the Citizens Award 3, I thank you. It was a great honor. To Councilman-elect Brian Napa, thank you for stepping up to serve and being out there. I'd like to thank Council President Steve McAllister, as he mentioned very humbly, that we met on the Finance Committee. And we served 4 years as members of the Finance Committee. And I'm proud to say, before there was even discussion, I went to you, Councilman or Council President, and I said, I hope you're thinking about running for Council President. There's a reason why I did that. It is your calm leadership, your knowledge, your ability to reach out, your knowledge of understanding the concerns of every ward, as well as serving your own. It's been a great honor to serve with you, and I look forward anytime you ask, I will be there and I will work and serve with you at any time. And I can't tell you, I think you did a great job these last 4 years. And we really did a great job as a council and as a community moving this city forward. The infrastructure, wherever the funds came from, we addressed infrastructure. Recreation is up and going, and our fleet of vehicles are serving our citizens. And that's what we thrive to do. That's why we serve. And finally, thank you to the city clerk, Lynn Dabrowska. Thank you, city solicitor. Thank you, Joanne, and to all the directors. But finally, I have to say thank you to my family, because as you said, Mr. President, we can go home. There's a lot of hours that go in, especially when there's an international airport and a major development, where that work extends deep into the evening. And if you don't have the support system at home, it adds to the stress. And I never had the stress because I always had the support system of my wife of 33 years, Anna. And thank you so much. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Howe. Any other council members have anything under general communications? Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute recess. The families can take some pictures, and then they can stay or move on. And then we will go back into the Intergovernmental Committee. Again, I thank the public for your indulgence on this. We apologize that we're running a little behind, but thank you very much. 5-minute recess. Councilman Howe, do you call for 5-minute recess? Second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are in recess.
It is now 7:31 and the Intergovernmental Committee is now back in session. Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I am doing fine, and you?
Very well, thank you.
I am here to speak about the plan, and
Yes.
I feel that we've forgotten about, Richard Langseth, Budlong Farm. We seem to have once again forgotten about the Buttonwoods Fire District, which is a municipality within the municipality. And being a former resident of the Buttonwoods Fire District, I know that it's really important that they be engaged when it comes to any kind of emergency planning or any kind of FEMA planning with the city of Warwick. And I believe, question, that they were not involved with this plan.
Sean Henry, Planning Department. No, there was no presence from the Buttonwoods Fire District at our meetings.
I'm not suggesting that everything be pulled apart. That would be ridiculous. However, I really think that the Buttonwoods Fire District should be approached on such intergovernmental entities. Isn't it interesting? Intergovernmental. I mean, they're another government right here in Warwick. I mean, why wouldn't they be invited to these kinds of meetings and and get things straightened out? Because the next hurricane that we have, they are going to show up, I can assure you. And they're going to ask the city for help, I can assure you. They're going to ask the state for help. They're going to ask FEMA for help. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous that they're not involved in this kind of process. So I'd like to remind everybody on the city council coming up that it's really important to reach out to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lattiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that we've gotten some good comments and some good suggestions involving this item, and I just want to defer it to the solicitor so that, well, let's take one in particular, the one from Ms. Komar regarding the schools. And we all know the financial situation that exists surrounding these two schools. We know that there is significant cuts that have been made and continue to be made. So there is concern whether or not these two schools will be a shelter or not. And I just want to hear from you that this city council at some point in the future, whether it be January, February, or whenever, has an opportunity, as was mentioned, to amend whatever we possibly approve this evening.
The details presented in the plan are the administration's best presentation of what they have available for today. We can't necessarily hit moving targets that are outside the scope of this plan today. It's certainly items to be paying attention to as updating the plan in the future as the city transforms would be appropriate. But as Mr. Henry has noted previously, the plan has been approved. This is the last step of this phase, but opportunities to present future substantive changes, as was mentioned, they've reached out that future updates can happen, but that would have to follow the FEMA process. So today we're at what's before you is the opportunity to move forward with a plan, and it's up to the council and the administration, and everybody in the public's input to stay on top of this in greater detail moving forward.
And Sean, you agree that this council will have an opportunity to propose amendments in the future?
Yes, Councilman. As I said, the Hazard Mitigation Committee, which was reformed to put this plan together, is now required to meet at least once annually to address issues as they come up. So Pilgrim High School still exists today and is still a shelter today, and that will move forward until we have a new school, and then we'll see at that point where the new shelter will be designated, and then it'll be updated at that time to reflect the current information at that time.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Move favorable action. Second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. It It is now 7:37 and the Intergovernmental Committee is adjourned.
Thank you very much. We are now back in the full council meeting. We've already done roll call and general communications, so we're moving on to executive communications. There are none. A is the acceptance of the minutes from the council meeting held on December 2nd. Councilman Howe?
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next up on the agenda is public comment. Rule 41. After general communications and prior to the consent calendar at the last regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council each month, there shall be a period of time not to exceed 30 minutes, during which citizens may comment about Warwick City government issues subject to the following stipulations. The total period of time for public comment shall not exceed 30 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many citizens as possible to participate. Each citizen signed up and present shall have not to exceed 5 minutes to speak, provided, however, that if more than 6 citizens are signed up and present, the 30 minutes will be split evenly among speakers. Time shall not be transferable among speakers. The topics for comments shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during the public comment period. The public comment session will terminate at the expiration of the earlier of the speakers concluded in their allotted time, or 30 minutes. Waiver of this provision requires a unanimous vote of the council. I do want to give one last, is anyone else that would like to be heard that did not sign up? Okay, we have 5 individuals this evening, 4 individuals that have signed up this evening. First up is James M. If we could just turn the microphone on for, it's on, thank you.
My name is James Martin. I'm a taxpayer and a resident of Warwick, and I'd like to address the committee about the 2 new schools. I read about a month ago in the Beacon that the mayor suggested or said that the taxpayers just had one simple question to answer, and do they want 2 new schools? And I thought that was about the most dishonest way anyone could have, suggested that's the way that vote went. Because I remember 2.5 years ago when there were signs all over the city, yes for kids, everywhere. And I remember that the taxpayers and the voters were led to believe that they were going to get 2 magnificent schools loaded with all kinds of amenities for the kids and for the teachers. And now, way over budget, it looks like it was just a classic bait and switch. The taxpayers expected 2 new Rolex watches, and you want to give them 2 Timexes for the same cost as the Rolexes. It's only common sense, even what you have right now, they're still working on trying to cut out costs, but they're not going to be able to get it below the $350, which was originally promised. And the first thing they're going to have to cut out is the construction materials and the way they do the construction. I mean, that's the first thing. So we're going to have the cheapest possible materials in these buildings. You're going to end up with 2 buildings that are just barely adequate, just barely big enough to hold the students and the teachers, with hardly any amenities, nothing to speak of, certainly nothing to brag about. In fact, the amenities that are in the current schools are probably going to be better than what you have in the new schools. So I don't know who benefits from this. It's not the students. They're not going to benefit anything. They're going to lose out on athletic fields and even inside their schools. It's not the teachers. There's no benefit for them at all. The taxpayers, no benefit there. We're going to have to pay for it. That's going to be a burden, if anything. The only beneficiary here is the construction company. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. And you know, another thing I read was that the mayor had suggested, or he said, he was quoted as saying that ship has sailed when it came to talking about the building a centrally located high school, a single one, or refurbishing the ones we have. And I don't think there's anything wrong with refurbishing a building. You know, you look at Cranston East High School, it'll be over 100 years old next year. It was 100. It was built in 1925. That's been refurbished several times. They've put 2 new wings on it. Those students have everything they need. The school system in Cranston is very well liked. It's a good school system. You look at LaSalle Academy in Providence. It's over 150 years old. They have lots of land there. They've put several buildings up on their property over the last number of years. Never once did they determine that they should rip down their old school and put up a new one, because it's not cheaper to build new. That old school's been rebuilt, refurbished, and brought up to brand new standards multiple times over 150 years. And it's going to continue to be. And we should be doing the same thing here. You know, we have a centrally located school building, and that happens to be Warwick Vets. If you look at the population in our schools, it's been dwindling for 35 years. When Tollgate was built in the early 70s, we had about 20,000 students in Warwick. Today, there's 8,000. The last time we had 8,000 students, we only had one high school. It was Warwick Vets. That school has all kinds of amenities inside and out.
You have 1 minute,
aged,
sir.
they're dated, no
1
doubt
minute.
about it. But the whole school could be redone. You could refurbish it, bring it up to new, bring all the amenities up to the latest, greatest stuff, fix the fields, bring them up, and you could probably do it for a lot less money than the 2 new schools. And I know there's an issue with traffic over there, but you know, right now, the buses only come in from West Shore Road. There's no reason why you can't bring buses in from Sandy Lane also. And in fact, if that's not enough, you could stagger the classes. You could have the seniors and juniors come in a half hour or an hour earlier than the freshmen and the sophomores. And that would also relieve the traffic problem. And the school population is expected to continue to go down. Now, I know I've heard the argument that these new schools are going to bring people into the city. I think that's a foolish argument. It's ridiculous. If you're looking for, if you need a doctor, you don't go looking for a doctor and hire one or find one.
Thank you very
because
much,
his
sir.
office is in a new building, right? You find a doctor that's given his patients really
Sir,
good
thank you
care.
very much. Your time is up. Thank you.
Sorry, what?
Your time is up.
Time is up?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Have a good evening. The next speaker is Richard L.
Richard Langseth, Budlong Farm Road in Warwick. You know, the previous speaker really enlightened me. I hadn't thought about it. Hey, make Vets the high school. What the heck? I mean, it's a good high school. Now it's a middle school. There's no reason why we can't move students around between middle schools and high schools. Well, why do we think that Tollgate has to be a high school? Tollgate could be a middle school. Vets could be a high school. We have $350 million to do something with. Sure, the state may be requiring, oh, you have to build a new school with that. But the state is so screwed up, they can't even keep their Social Security numbers private. I mean, this state is absolutely pathetic. And I've been here 50 years, and I've never seen a mess like this. This is just awful. In the city of Warwick, there's a lot of bright people on the city council. And Donna, I really want to congratulate you for your 30 years and your help with me. That was, you know, we've been fighting to get Buttonwoods public for 25 years. And I don't know why the people are so afraid of these few 160 people in the Buttonwoods Fire District. Oh, you can't upset those people. Well, hell, we have 80,000 people in Warwick. And you know what? It's changing radically because we're in the Boston area now, guys. People from Boston are moving into Warwick with kids. They need a new school because they expect decent education. They really do. But it doesn't have to be so rigid. And I really congratulate this gentleman for his idea. I think it's quite a good one. And we really, as the new city council moves forward, we really should look at that. Because you can't spend more than $350 million. You don't have authorization. So take the $350 million and figure out what to do with it. And tell the school committee to, go pound sand. We don't need an independent school committee that's just bleeding us dry. We need a school committee that's a committee that advises the people of Warwick on how to run everything. This idea of an independent school committee that you can't upset is absurd. You got me worked up. You really do. And I came here to talk about the Buttonwoods Fire District and why it's public and not private and all that. But you've heard this story endlessly from me and from a lot of other people. But boy, I'll tell you, maybe we can get this school thing straightened out. Put it into vets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Rob C.
Rob Cody, Ward 7. I'd like to congratulate the new incoming council members. I wish you all the best. I hope that you do things differently than what I've done from the previous council members. That being, listen to your constituents, spend some time, look in the books, study the subject matter, answer your phone. There's been a lot that's come before this council from people that know much more about the subject matter that comes before the council than the council members. I do have some concerns, I have to be honest, because I've never seen any of the new council members before in a council meeting or to take the microphone. But I can assure you that myself and other people that are pretty well versed in the city business are more than happy to spend as much time as you need to get you caught up to speed or to help you navigate through the complex issues of the city of Warwick. And we are facing some serious complex issues, schools just being one of them. I had some prepared statements for the 4 people that are leaving because, frankly, I don't like you people. You have not served the city in the best interest of the residents. Not at all. When I look around, you 4 people were very instrumental in making changes in the council to limit the public's voice, to limit our ability to come before you and speak, whether it's in budget hearings, committee hearings, and contract hearings. That's wrong. And I'm hoping that the new council president and that the new council members reverse those archaic rules that were put in place to simply shut the voices of the people down. There's a lot of people in this community that bring a lot to the table with their experience. I don't need to mention their names, but they've been ignored for a long time. And I being one of them, we've told you ahead of time, like we had a crystal ball. We've told you what would happen with contracts. You didn't listen. We told you what would happen with unsustainable health care benefits. You didn't listen. I came before this council 8 years ago, told you how we build schools. Number of students times 200 square feet per student times $350 a square foot. You guys remember that? Certain individual mocked me that night using disparaged language that I didn't know what I was talking about. Guess what, Ms. Travis? The only difference is now it's $800 a square foot. And we can't afford. And you people have done nothing And, all the pomp and circumstances, backslapping each other, congratulating each other for all your great work. Your great work can be summed up on one line of the budget. Mr. McAllister, you should know it. You should be intimately familiar with it. It's the one line in the budget, which is the total cost of operating the city. And on your time here, it's gone up $80 million. You've never answered one question about finances, contracts, negotiations, or benefits. Mr. Howe, the same way. You people have contributed to the demise of this city. It cannot continue to go this way. We're facing $1 billion of unfunded liabilities. And you guys, Mr. Howe's laughing, right? Probably texting. But I mean, the good news is now that Mr. Howe won't be on the council, he'll have plenty of time to spend some time to get his math students to a proficiency level of more than 7.4%. I don't know if any of you have the mathematical capabilities to look in the future
1 minute, Mr. Cody.
and see where we're going financially. And trust me, I've looked at all your financial backgrounds. I've done background checks on all of you. I'm not impressed with most of you, the way you manage your personal assets. And look where we are. You can laugh all you want, Steve. You have been an abysmal failure as a council president, as a councilman. And I have to apologize for the residents of Ward 7 because 8 years ago, I supported you. I wrote letters on your behalf. I took 12 people to vote for you that had no intentions of voting, and you won by 4 votes. And since that day, you've never answered a phone call, a text message, or an email. And you've never answered a question on finances. That needs to change for Warwick to be sustainable. And I know, Ms. Travis, you'll miss me in the future. You miss my comments, but the good news is I'm going to see you in court. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Mike Z. Go ahead, Mrs. Aram.
Okay, good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council, members of the public who are here tonight. It's Mike Zarum from resident in Ward 2. Thank you, Jeremy. I don't know what to say tonight, but tonight's a transition night. I do want to thank Mr. Cody for his diligence in bringing attention to a lot of the problems in this city that don't get addressed and solutions and everything. And I do want to follow up on what Mr. Cody said, that a lot of people come up to this microphone or reach out to our legislative body to try and make Warwick a better place. And there are many, many constituents in this city that feel like their voices are not heard. And I want to pick up on one other point that Mr. Cody said, that there are a lot of residents who are so-called subject matter experts, whether it be the school system, whether it be the watersheds we have, whether it be finance and the bonds that are being floated at interest rates when the Federal Open Markets Committee is going to meet Wednesday of this week to change rates again. I cannot think of anything more important for this legislative body than to listen to people in this community that want to make this a better place and have subject matter expertise and want to share that with all of you to make this a better place and make the city more efficient. I don't know what else to say other than with being a transition night tonight. I want to thank everybody that's before us tonight, except Mr. Howe, and I'm going to explain why in a minute, but I want to thank everybody for all the work you've done. Those who tonight's your last night, I wish you a good future and hope you enjoy your time from being here in a very, very stressful position. Now, by selecting Mr. Howe to single him out, the reason I'm doing that, I would give him an award and call him Terrible Tim for the one that listens least than anybody. I understand the spats that you mentioned with Mr. Lattiser, who I want to congratulate for his due diligence and taking a deeper look at the financial figures is something that we need. A couple meetings ago at the open mic, I mentioned that the people on Strawberry Field West were promised by the Airport Corporation to have a noise berm built all the way down Strawberry Field Road from Fieldview Drive to where the cell lot used to be. And then finding out that the Airport Corporation was not going to build it. So what do we question? Why did the city council give city streets and a public way to the airport, thinking in exchange they're going to get a berm for the people, and find out they're not going to get it? Well, we can ask Mr. Howe when he leaves the city council to ponder this, because I did go back, like I said I was going to do, and try and find out what went wrong. I went back and I looked at all the drawings that the airport corporation had submitted to the city. They were very hard to read. I blew them up to what's called a D-size engineering drawing so I could see the detail. The ones that were submitted to the city, and Mr. Howe should have known this, did not go all the way down to the end of Strawberry Field Road as the people were promised. I drove out there with a few people last night to see where it was, what number on Strawberry Field West this earthen berm is going to. And looking at it through my thinking like an engineer, the way Iftikhar Ahmad, head of CEO of RIAC, would look at it, it looks like the mayor told everybody that the trucks to access that were not going to go down Strawberry Field Road. And it looks to me like where they're not going to build a berm is the perfect access point for all the tractor trailers for FedEx to get to that new facility for the cheapest cost. Right where the residents were promised it wouldn't happen. That's what I see on the drawing board. Anybody that wants to see these drawings, I've had them blown up. I've had them mounted on foam core, so that I will be presenting at future meetings. And with that, I would just ask that the new people coming in.
1 minute, Mr. Langseth.
Thank you. I would ask that all the new people coming in work with people in the community who are knowledge holders to make Warwick a better place. When we set a goal, let's make sure that we reach it and that things don't happen to get things off the railroad track, and do what's best for the residents that live here. Thank you, and best of luck to all those who are leaving, and welcome to everybody coming in. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the consent calendar. First up is PCR 120-24, resolution relative to bids, committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley and Councilman Gephardt. Go ahead, Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bid 2025-274, 2025-287, 2025-276, 2025-313, 2025-289, 2025-326, 2025-270, 2024-271 Bravo, 2025-325, 2025-311, 2025-328, and 2025-312. That concludes the bid package, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Howe. Any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening in Finance Committee? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The clerk will call roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes. I apologize. Mr. Howe, yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Snappy? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, consent passes.
Thank you. Consent passes. I believe one item was removed from the consent calendar. Councilman Howe.
Yes, Mr. President. Formerly bid 2024-322 City Hall Plaza Site Improvements is now PCR 121-24. Committee voted favorable, recommended favorable action.
Okay, for action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley and Councilman Gephardt. Any questions or comments on what is now PCR 124-24? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was a lot of discussion, as you know, about this in committee. I will not be supporting this item. I understand the reasoning for extending the up to expense of the $200,000, which is to avoid the possibility of turning this into a Davis-Bacon Act requiring prevailing wages. And I agree that that would increase the cost of this project significantly. As you know, I voted against this project in the beginning, and I am still not a supporter of it for numerous reasons. First of all, I don't think that the timing is correct, given the unknown financial situations that we'll be facing in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, and perhaps even longer. We have 2 high schools that potentially will be built, and they are out of control. out of control with excessive cuts and the possibility of an additional $38 million increase. We have healthcare costs that are through the roof. They are now somewhere in the vicinity of $25,000 per family. We have contracts that we will have to pay for, we'll have to fund. We have pensions that are going to increase in comparison or in addition to those salaries. We still have a large amount of vehicles that are needed in sanitation. We just saw that recently, where we only had, I believe it was 7 of the 14 vehicles on the road. And that's in spite of the administration pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars into the equipment, which obviously was the right thing to do. So I understand the business reason for looking to increase the spending authority by $200,000. However, I feel that the timing is off for entertaining an $8 million expenditure that we don't know how and if we're going to be able to support in perpetuity. So I will be voting no on this item. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt? Yes. Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
No.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no, motion passes.
Thank you, motion passes. We're now moving to new business. First up is PCR 119-24, Committee Report, Intergovernmental.
Favorable action, Mr. President.
For action, Councilman McElroy.
Favorable action, Mr. President.
Second by Councilman Howe. Okay, any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening in committee? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you, motion passes. Unanimous consent. Ward 1, anything in the docket under unanimous consent? Ward 2?
Pass.
Ward 3?
Pass.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5? Ward 6?
Pass.
Ward 7 passes. Ward 8? Ward 9?
Pass.
Councilwoman Travis.
If there be no further business of this honorable body, I move to a docket session.
All those in favor of moving the docket session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in the docket session. I have 12 items to docket this evening. No, just kidding. Ward 7 has nothing to docket at this time. Ward 1, anything to docket? Ward 2?
Pass.
Ward 3?
Pass.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5? Ward 6?
Pass.
Ward 8? Go ahead.
Omnibus resolution, congratulations and condolences.
Ominous resolution of congratulations and condolences. Community affairs.
Omnibus resolution for traffic studies.
Ominous resolution for traffic studies. Public safety.
And then adoption of the council rules for the 2025-2026 term.
Adoption of the council rules for the 2025 and 2026 council term. Intergovernmental. Ward 9.
I have one. Resolution to the Department of Public Works of Warwick and the Town Manager of East Greenwich to address the sinkhole at the intersection of Division Street and Love Lane.
Intergovernmental. And there is no more business before the city council. I thank you all. It's been an honor.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes. Merry Christmas, everybody.